Hi, everyone. Welcome. Happy Friday if you are joining us from Australia. Happy Thursday if you're joining from somewhere else in the world. We were just waiting for a few more people to join. So we might give it a minute or two and then kick off, but feel free to have a read of the ground rules. They're up on the screen now. The first one is be present. We want everyone to get the most out of this presentation. So close your emails, put your phone away for a minute so you can actually be here with us and get all the valuable information that we want to give to you. There will be a chat Q&A function, so you can post any questions that you have. I'll go through how that works in a minute. Just to let you know, this session is being recorded and we'll send out a link after if you want to watch it later or share it with anyone. And also, just to let you know, we're experimenting too. Tech issues happen all the time. I assure you, we've tested this a few times already, and even to the moment, we're still experiencing some little fiddly things that we're working through. So just be kind, know that we might have to troubleshoot or pivot along the way. But sit tight and we'll get started in a minute. All right, a few more people have joined on the webinar now, so I'll go ahead and get started. So we're talking about remote facilitation today, and before we begin, I just want to start by acknowledging the Boonwurrung and Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional owners of the land on which this work was produced. We pay our respects to them for allowing us to live and work on their land, and to their elders past, present, and future. I'd also like to acknowledge any other traditional owners that are joining us here today. So I just want to tell you a little bit about who we are and why we are so passionate about this topic, about effective facilitation, whether that be remotely or in person. So my name is Samantha White, and I'm the Agile coach here for Isobar Melbourne. And both Michaela and I, a big part of our roles is facilitating cross-functional teams effectively. So I'll pass over to Michaela so she can introduce herself.
Thank you, Sam. So I'm part of the business design team in the Melbourne office. I have a background in service design and product design and passionate about accessible and inclusive design. And as Sam said, we do a lot of facilitation in our day-to-day role. So now Sam's going to tell you a little bit about Isobar.
Thanks, Nick. So Isobar, we're a global digital agency. We have 85 offices across 45 countries. And what that means is being part of such a large and diverse network is sometimes we have to work across locations and time zones when we're collaborating with each other. In a nutshell, what we do is help solve complex business challenges through experience-led digital transformation. And today we'll be discussing the challenge of collaboration that COVID-19 has created for many organizations. We've been gathering insights from a bunch of research that we've done, our own experiments and experiences, and collecting the best-in-class work that the agency has been doing, and we've packaged it all up into 4 principles that we feel promotes, I guess, effective facilitation. So we'd also like to hear from you about what your facilitation challenges might have been and what you've been doing to overcome this. So there'll be time for Q&A at the end. So how this webinar works is this is Microsoft's live stream in Teams, and it's going to be a 45-minute webinar. The session is being recorded, so we can share that with you afterwards. There is a Q&A panel in the top right of your screen, which is over here, and you can post questions throughout the session. We'll try to answer them as we go, but there'll also be some designated time at the end so we can answer those questions for you. So the challenge, the collaboration challenge. So things have changed. How we collaborate with teams and clients have changed as well due to COVID and everybody working from home. There's going to be teams who were working remotely long before COVID came along, and you might be really comfortable and thriving in this space. But for many of us, this is going to be new, and this is a new way of working. And some people might be struggling, and they might not know what to do or how to collaborate effectively remotely, and they might be trying to recreate some of the old things that they had when they were working in a co-located space. So we wanted to just call that out. And I guess when we made the shift to work from home and essentially the entire world transitioned, we knew that anyone who was facilitating or had a facilitator role was going to be met with this challenge. So we set out to, I guess, solve this how might we effectively facilitate, collaborate, and co-design remotely in a way which delivers desired outcomes and makes a real difference to people and teams. Through all of the insights we learned, all of the research, interviews, our own experiences, and gathering all of the best-in-class work that our teams have been doing at Isobar, we boil that down to 4 practices that we think will help you facilitate remote workshops more effectively. And they are to have a growth mindset, build your session based on outcomes, create a facilitation framework, and to remember to be human and plan and invite for human interactions. So we're about to dive deeper into each one of these sections, and Mick will start us off by talking about what having a growth mindset means.
Thanks, Sam. So as Sam mentioned, a lot has changed for some of us, and we need to consider our mindset and our approach to facilitation by being open and our ability to adapt to change. It's okay, whatever phase or stage you're in regarding your skills as a facilitator, but you need to be open to growing and trying different things and knowing that sometimes it might not work out the way that you had planned, and that's okay. See this as an opportunity for you to grow in your practice. So do some creative problem solving and analysis of your facilitation practice, stretch your thinking and extend on your practice face-to-face and now into the digital. Some of our Isobar team members have been getting pretty creative to feel more comfortable at home. This is, way of working is something that might become our new normal, which leads us, into talking a little bit about how we don't want to rely on our old behaviours to get us through. So consider all of the activities that you use to facilitate, from your body language. How will you create a welcome space for your digital room, behaviours you might have when presenting face-to-face, and what was the purpose of those behaviours and how will you extend it online. So we use a squeaky pig in our workshops face-to-face to bring attention back to the facilitators and focus when participants are in, working away in their groups. It was a really fun and effective way to bring an activity to a close. We kind of named it Respect the Pig. We experimented online with how do we achieve the same outcome. We tried different sounds through speakers, features in Zoom, and essentially we experimented here on Miro and used a visual that we would put on top of some of our boards to signal that the activity was ending and to bring back focus. One of the things also to consider is that we are trying different things and they might not always go to plan or have a smooth transition. So give yourself room for trial and error. This is a continuous cycle of growth and experimentation, and there's going to be some frustrating moments. I've been groaning like I hate technology, especially this morning a few times, but I've had to adapt and use some creative problem solving to achieve my desired outcome. And I want you to remember that some of the most incredible concepts and ideas that we've seen in the world have come from times of hardship, or often when we design better when we have constraints. So it does rely on people giving it a red hot go and putting their ideas out there. Which brings us on to talking a bit about how you feel safe to experiment and the environment that you might need around you to do that. So we have presented a previous webinar, Sam and one of our other practitioners, Julia Burks, about high-performing teams. So if you're in a leadership or management role, I would highly recommend that you check out this webinar, and we can provide the link at the end of this presentation. They touch on lots of amazing topics like psychological safety, making sure that you're keeping the fun, and Sam will go a little bit into that later, but make sure that everyone is in the best headspace to collaborate in an online facilitated session. And the last thing that I want to touch on is around not making assumptions. Just because it's worked for you once or twice in the past doesn't mean it's going to work seamlessly this time. Do participants have edit access to whatever tool that they've selected? What's the best setup that the participants have in their homes, and are they going to be comfortable for the length of the session? Do they even have secure internet? I know that we might be having a few hiccups ourselves, so you need to test and check these things. Otherwise, you might be playing video conference bingo, and you've got a participant chorus of "You're muted, please." So don't assume anything regarding the digital tool. Just as you would, I would recommend you check in with your participants if they have any accessibility requirements. So ensure that your tool selection and your activity setup is accessible for everyone. In one of my past workshops, we had to be really careful regarding colour coordination and of our post-it notes, as two of our participants had colour blindness conditions. So creating safety online and double checking that everything is working also helps people collaborate freely. So now Sam's going to take us through a little bit about the second practice, which is around the importance of focusing on outcomes.
Thanks, Meg. So when we think about outcomes, all of our decisions should be based on the outcomes we're trying to achieve. So to be able to do that, we need to really clearly understand what is it that we're trying to achieve, and take a moment and stop and think about it and decide, is a facilitated session actually the right thing to do? Or are you making an assumption and jumping to conclusions that you need to book a meeting? So really understanding the outcome you're trying to achieve, taking a moment to pause and deciding before you move forward is really important. Think about how else you might be able to achieve that desired outcome that's not a facilitated session. Is there individual work that can be done? Can you send something in advance that can be done outside of the session? So I think, decide what you actually want to get done, and then think about if a facilitated session is the way to go. You also need to be thinking about your audience. Who is the session for? Have they worked in this way before? If it is a facilitated session that you're going with, are they used to working remotely, or is this something new for them? Who's actually required in the session to get the outcome that you want to achieve? And do participants understand the purpose and the contribution that they're going to make from being in the session? People are more likely to join a meeting, especially in this current climate where people are in back-to-back meetings. They're more likely to join if they understand the purpose, what the outcome is going to be, and what their contribution is, and how that will be valuable for them being in the session. So that's really important. Make sure you send an agenda so that they can understand that and have upfront any pre-reading that they need to do to contribute in that session effectively. You also need to select the tool that is going to drive the outcome, not the other way around. So when you're thinking about your audience, what's their digital maturity? Have they used the tool that you're going to select before, or is that going to be challenging for them? So as facilitators, we need to take the burden off of the participants to make sure that we're providing an experience that provides the best outcome and that they can actually get on with doing the task instead of trying to fiddle around trying to use the tools. So this is an example of a slide our Isobar Amsterdam team has been sending to their participants before a session is kicked off. And it just outlines all the things that somebody might need before they get into the session. So if you're doing some sketching or something and people need to have paper and pen, make sure that they know that, or anything that they need about the physical environment, if they need dual screens, and just knowing if somebody has a dual screen or not is actually really important for how you as a facilitator plan the session, because it might be very different activity. And also, if your session is going to be longer than an hour, you might want to tell participants to bring snacks or get water, or surround their desk with everything that they're going to need to be comfortable and be present for the duration of that session. Next, this is just an example of the types of tools that we use at Isobar to facilitate remote sessions. In no way am I endorsing these tools. I'm just showing the combination that we might use to get the outcome that we're trying to achieve. So for video conferencing, we use Teams or Zoom, and there's pros and cons to each of those depending on the outcome we're trying to achieve. For co-design sessions, we use a mix. So it can be Miro, which is like an online whiteboarding tool, Metro Retro, which is a kind of whiteboarding tool that our Scrum teams have been using to collaborate. We dabbled with Mural to understand its capabilities and the templates that they have. SharePoint, if we are using data sensitive information and we want to make sure that's secure. You can actually collaborate with this suite of Google online products. So Docs and Slides can be used. Some of our development team uses the Atlassian suite, and our designers and dev team also use a combination of Figma to collaborate. For presentations, we use Google Slides and PowerPoint. So again, choose the combination that's going to be right for you to get the outcome that you need. Think about your audience, what they're going to be comfortable using, and the tool should really be the enabler of the outcome. So I'm going to show you a few more examples of what our team has been doing with using the combination of tools to get their outcomes for remote facilitated sessions. This example is an internal co-design that we did. There was around 8 people, and the outcome we were trying to achieve was to ideate and to prioritize those ideas. So we assessed our audience, and based on the outcomes we wanted to achieve, decided that we would use Miro and Zoom. And we chose these tools because our audience was pretty digitally mature using those tools. A lot of our strat team, our strategic designers, they use Miro a lot, so they would already understand the functionality. We also needed people to do group activities, and having a timer function was great because, in the real world, you would still need to time all of your activities, and this function made it really visible, and also people could hear when the timer went off, so to come back to the group. They also have a presentation mode feature, so you don't have to use multiple tools like presentation tool and a facilitation collaborative space. So you could actually use it kind of like slides and help people guide through the activities. When we talk about using Zoom for that activity, we needed to split participants up into separate groups, and Zoom has a really great feature to be able to do that called breakout rooms. So when you split people up into groups as a facilitator, you also can wander between rooms and help people out, make sure they're doing the activity, they're not stuck. There's also a feature that somebody can ask a participant to join, ask the facilitator to join the room if they need help, and then you're invited and you can join. So that was a really great feature. Teams, you can create breakout rooms in Teams, but it's just not as flawless as an experience. But we saw that it is on the roadmap to develop a feature like this. The gallery view is also really great in Zoom because you can see everybody's faces and everyone has an equal opportunity to be heard and seen, which was great for a collaborative session. And they have a raise hand feature, which had its pros and cons. You, as a participant, can press a button to raise your hand so you don't disrupt the facilitator or whoever's talking, and a little banner pops up, but it is so subtle that as a facilitator you can often miss it. So we found it more effective to actually just like wave your hand and get someone's attention. Or we've heard about other teams using collaboration cards, which is physical cards that denotes how you're feeling or that have like emojis on them. So these are some ways that you can facilitate and still collaborate remotely using that tool. So we also had an example from Isobar Good. It's the part of the business that's dedicated to social impact. And the Isobar Good team have been running proactive workshops with some of our clients in response to COVID-19. And they gave participants the option. So they set up Miro and they also set up Google Slides. And the same activities could be run in either tool. It was just based on deciding on what the participant was comfortable with, and then they could choose the tool that they wanted to use. But at the end of the day, they got the same outcome. So again, the tool is the enabler to drive the outcome you're looking for. And this other example is a co-design session that our Sydney team did and one our Melbourne team did. A client in automotive and FMCG industry. And the outcome here that they were trying to achieve was a sketching session. So based on these clients' digital maturity and the team, they assessed that it'd be too hard to try to get them to sketch in Miro. Like you have to be a pretty advanced user to be able to do that. So the facilitator planned for them to actually do sketching on paper and then email the facilitator the sketch, and then they would put it up on the Miro board. And again, this is a great way as a facilitator to make sure everyone can participate in the activity and that you're taking the burden off of the participants and putting it on yourself as a facilitator. So do whatever it is that you need to do to get the outcome you want it to achieve. And sometimes it means hacking things together like this team did in this example. So next, Mick is going to take us through why having your own facilitator framework is so important.
Thanks, Sam. So having a framework written out or even having checklists for yourself as a facilitator is a really helpful way to ensure that you haven't missed anything and you're making the best use of everybody's time, including yourself and your participants. So having a facilitator or being a good facilitator is not just a role for a few hours. This is something that you need to consider in the planning session, execution, and wrap up. So we're going to share a few examples of how Sam and I and our other Isobar facilitators have considered our approach end to end. So starting off to chat a little bit about agendas and run sheets. So as a facilitator, you need to have your own agenda and run sheet to ensure you're keeping on time. This is a template we use in Isobar, keeps track of our timings and also assigns roles and responsibilities. So as Sam mentioned, we do also send an agenda to our participants. So they're aware of any pre-work or reading that they need to do, and their space is prepared for whatever they, what's to come. So to be clear, you're making two agendas, one for you and what you need to do, and one for your participants. It's also really nice to know when a scheduled break might be. I, for one, assess whether I'm going to drink another coffee, depending on how many breaks that I've been given in the workshop. The next thing to think about as a facilitator is stocking your online toolkit. So in real life, you might have had a workshop toolkit that had Sharpies, pen, paper, dots, butcher's paper that you would have brought to your meetings. So you need to have the equivalent created ready for you in whatever tool you choose. This, of course, depends on the confidence of your participants and yourself, or even the tool that you've selected, but we do recommend creating any assets you might need ahead of time. Here in Miro, we've been creating a facilitator's bay, and it sits alongside any of our activity areas, and it houses items that you might need or your participants. So in this example, we've got lots of post-its and some dots that we've been using in our voting sessions. So this is a good way to keep the flow of the conversation going as well. The next thing to consider is the online space. So just as you would a physical room, try not to overwhelm your participants with lots of information at one time. To solve for that, we've been using some staging areas, which is the example on the left, or even just blocking upcoming activities from site until participants are ready to get there. So the staging environment on the left allows for all of your assets and templates to be created in a separate space or file, and then you copy and paste it over as needed. You can have a fully prepared kit elsewhere and alternate activities depending on how the workshop is even progressing. The blocking option is an example from our Isobar Good workshops. It's a semi-transparent rectangle. You can lock it over the activities and make sure that participants are focusing on the task at hand. We also have a habit of locking that content on Miro, so that means that it's not able to be easily moved around by participants who might be click happy and accidentally deleting entire workshop plans. That's happened to me before. So I want to encourage you, when you are trying some of these different ways of working, is to test it. Oh, I've skipped a slide, sorry, we'll go back, there we go. So when you're outlining your activities or agenda, make sure you do a dry run of the entire workshop, all the features, all the links. It'll give you an idea about timing, how quickly or how slowly it's going to take to describe the activities and for people to even log on. So it might be slow the first few times you try this, but people will get faster as they get more comfortable. We've had scenarios where we've planned an entire workshop and been 5 to 10 minutes in and realized that nobody had the right access level to edit even on the tool we selected. So it's worthwhile to know that at the end of the day, no matter how much you test, you never know what will happen and what will flow best with your participants. So we do recommend trying to organise sort of a plan B or a contingency plan. I know that most facilitators on the line today probably know very rarely do workshops go 100% to plan. So when you're putting together your agenda and considering your trials and experiments, put together some alternatives for any of your activities or tools, just in case everything goes south. So in this example, we were expecting 2 additional participants who last minute couldn't attend. This had a ripple effect on all of the activities that we had previously set up. So while one facilitator was able to move forward and fix the boards, the other was sort of managing the stream of conversation and keeping the participants none the wiser. So make sure that you're using the staging area or consider having a template space and how you might run an activity, perhaps 10 minutes instead of 20 if you realize that you're running short on time. One of the best ways that we have found to achieve this is ensure that you have clear roles and responsibilities outlined between your teammates or co-facilitators. So we've found that having 2 people at minimum has been pretty successful. So you need one person managing the flow of the conversation and the other to support back end with those digital assets and troubleshooting. We've got one right now on the line troubleshooting as we present. So you'll need to agree on those separate conversation channels as well to make sure that you're able to discuss privately with your co-facilitator on how everything's going. In this example, Sam and I like to use a quick emoji. In this case, it was a bomb, just to let us know if we were going over time or keeping ourselves on track as we were presenting. So in summary of things that you need to consider when you prepare, try creating a checklist to help with all the things that you need to cover and what you might need before running a remote session. You can use this checklist and we will be sending a link to this deck after the presentation, but I would encourage you to create your own depending on your own practice and what actually will be best for you and what works for you. So one of the things that we've been using when your workshop has actually kicked off is to set expectations and get everyone on the same page. You might have seen it when we first started this webinar. So we use a ground rules template like this at the start of any of our online workshops. You can create your own, anything that might be unique to your client or your team. So for example, the one at the start here, today it had that mentioned that we were recording. So consider things around online etiquette, muting your mic when you're not speaking, or worse, eating. And to be present, please mute your notifications and phone. One of the great examples I've seen is that IDEO was sending sleeping bags for people's phones while they were in workshops, which I thought was a brilliant idea. And the next thing to consider is, just as we're expecting our participants to follow guidelines and ground rules, you should probably be applying them to yourself as well. There's nothing worse than listening along to a presentation and I can hear, little far off dings or alerts from the facilitator's laptop as emails come in. So mute your notifications on your emails, put your phone away, and try to remove any distractions around you. I've sent my dog downstairs to hang out with my partner, so he won't be asking to play constantly or farting, which has been his go-to lately. So I do understand that not everyone's environment at home will be free of distraction at the moment, especially if you're currently playing the role of a teacher to your kids. So I do encourage you to be advocating for yourself and your circumstances. Your facilitators will thank you. And so the next thing that I want to consider is the types of activities or tasks that we want to achieve online. Literally anything is possible. So it could be short and simple to complex and multifaceted. Considering the complex economic environment at the moment, we understand that some businesses may need to be collaborating on some complex problems. How do their own roadmaps or strategic initiatives need to evolve in the current time? So here's an example of some of our strategic business mapping that the business design team did with one of our clients using Miro. So if you're preparing and you're facilitating well, there's absolutely no reason why you aren't able to collaborate on some more complex problems in this online space. We don't need to be waiting for, normal or our old ways of working to return. If they do at all, there is absolutely no time like the present. So now that your presentation has finished up, it's time to tie everything in a neat bow and ensure everyone knows exactly what their responsibilities are. Be really clear on their actions, assign dates to when they need to be done, and make sure that you're saving and backing up any of the work that you created in the workshop. Allow for feedback to occur so you can improve your practice. Not everybody likes doing feedback face-to-face, so try sending out Google Forms and improve your practice as a facilitator. And lastly, I really encourage you to share your work and what you're trying, so you can not only improve efficiencies within your own team and business, but also just as you as a practitioner to learn from others and different crafts. So at Isobar, we've set up a SharePoint page dedicated to templates, how-to guides, presentations, so that we're able to understand how everyone's going and what everyone's trying. So now Sam's going to finish up with our final practice, which is around the importance of being human.
Thanks, Mick. So part of facilitating a great session is to think about all the human interactions and aspects of it. And now that you're facilitating remotely, privacy and online ethics are going to play a really important part. So firstly, ask participants permission before you start recording a session. Teams actually has a little reminder banner to ask permission and notify people that you're actually recording them. And if there's any content that you will be using after the session or taking screenshots and it shows people's faces, you need to ask them and tell them where this might be used. Actually, throughout this deck, we've got quite a lot of our Isobarians featured, and Nick and I reached out to everyone and said, hey, do you mind if we feature you in this deck? Let people know how their data will be used, or if there's any sensitive data, how it will be stored. And also, it's really important right now that we're respecting people's privacy, because at the end of the day, like, we've moved into their homes, and some people might not be that comfortable putting their video on and giving you a tour of their living room. So I know Mick sometimes uses the blur background feature in Teams if she hasn't gotten through all of her house chores and she doesn't want anyone to know. So yeah, like, we're in people's homes. Think about how you need to plan your activities around this, and having video on and video off. Like, is there anything that you can actually do off video would be helpful. In saying that, I do encourage that online collaboration sessions are using video, because at the end of the day, some communication aspects are lost when you can't see facial expressions and, that body language, and only 7% of communication is actual spoken words. So we're missing out on all of those other things, and things can be misinterpreted without having the full gamut of, people's communication. And participants feel more engaged through face-to-face communication as well. And it helps to build trust between people when they can see faces. So have a conversation with your team about using video and if they're comfortable with it. So I wanted to give you an example of one of our Agile teams who were doing a sprint review remotely, and kind of how they decided to use cameras and have them on or off. So there were about 15 people in this sprint review, and as you can see, not everyone felt comfortable putting their camera on. Some people did, some people didn't. Excuse me. But what the team did decide is that when they were sharing back the work and demoing what they had done, they would put their camera on and talk through what they were showing. And take control of the screen, and the facilitator just kind of like managed the flow of the conversation throughout the session. So have a chat to your team, see what works for you guys. The next thing we need to be mindful of as a facilitator is digital fatigue. It's a real thing, and we're all in front of screens all day now, like glued to the screen. Sometimes there isn't even that many opportunities to like get up and go to the bathroom before meetings. So just be mindful of that. Like, I know that sometimes at the end of the day, like, my eyes are so dry and sore that I need to put my glasses on, and I generally don't wear glasses. So yeah, just think about that. And there's a study done that says, after 45 to 60 minutes of intense focus, like, your brain actually experiences fatigue and your focus starts to you lose focus and comprehension significantly. So if your session is over an hour, make sure you plan for breaks. And I think, Mick mentioned this earlier. As part of our Isobar Good workshops, the team there were running a 4-hour hypothesis creation session, and they made sure that they stopped every hour for a break, let people stretch, get water, get a tea, anything that they needed to do. But as a facilitator, you might want to let your participants know if you're okay with them just stepping away at any time and doing whatever they need to do, and just writing in the chat like, hey, I need to go and do this, but I'll be back. And then decide how you're going to catch them up on that information later. When you're thinking about scheduling, try not to schedule back-to-back meetings, and maybe there's a way that you can schedule a meeting kind of 15 minutes after the session has started, or make it a 45-minute meeting. So then you're offering to create that little bit of a gap between people's meetings where they actually can go and get up from their desk and do something else. Another thing is you can try to plan off-screen activities. So something that requires like pen and paper for a while and diverts their eyes off the screen, and then, have part of it on screen and part of it off screen. We also need to plan for human interactions. So when we think about this, we rarely start meetings on time. They start on time, like when they're supposed to, but then, there's all the pleasantries of like welcoming people and everyone having a chat and like finding out how their day was and asking about the weekend, and all of those things are great, and we should really be welcoming those interactions into our meetings. You know, at home right now, working remotely, like people want to show you their pets or like bring their kids to say hello, and we should let them do that, but we just need to plan for that time. And like Mick was saying, like when you have that agenda that you're planning out, like just put in 5 minutes at the beginning for that banter, as well as like, you know, 5 minutes at the end to close the meeting out. It's okay to plan for that water cooler chat, and it helps our teams feel more connected. And for some people, this could be the first human interaction that they're having all day, especially right now. And if somebody lives alone, like they could really need to have that chat with someone. When you're closing the meeting, I guess just have that extra time for people to kind of stroll out of the meeting, provide feedback of how the session went, because sometimes that's where the nuggets of gold are and gathering those insights as people are leaving. And you don't want the meeting to just like end abruptly and people feeling like they've just got kicked out. Mick has said that sometimes she feels like when a meeting ends really abruptly, it's like a door has been slammed in her face and she hasn't been able to, like, you know, wind down. So just think about all of those things as well. I guess what's going to set you apart from being a good facilitator versus a great facilitator is the experience that you provide to your participants. So as facilitators, we are responsible for the experience that our participants have. And I think it's really important to think about that. So you need to bring the vibes to this meeting and to this session. So, you know, you need to inject some humor and inject some energy and like lift up the room, because you don't have the same presence as you did in a physical space. So you really need to lift that up, I guess, when you're on screen and you're doing it remotely. And I was watching the news last night and thinking about this as I saw news anchors, and I'm just like, they don't talk like that. Like, there's no way that in real life they talk like that. So they're lifting their game essentially to be on camera, and you need to do the same. So think about if you need a digital facilitator persona when you're working remotely. Also think about, like, how are you going to engage them? Like, before we could walk around a room, but now what are you doing? You know, perhaps it's like checking back in the gallery view and making sure everyone is working, or, you know, calling people by name to engage them in the conversation. Think about what are these things and tools that you're going to use to keep people engaged. Like sometimes we've seen people using music in the session. So Teams has a feature where you can include audio. So that could be a nice touch if somebody's working individually. There's kind of focused time to put some music on, or, you know, do some physical, tactile things. I remember once I was facilitating a session and our team in Manila, and I asked them to go and buy some M&Ms before the session so that they could participate, and we were playing that M&M chocolate roulette game. And so it's just like thinking about those things of how to keep people engaged and kind of merge your physical and digital world. As Mick mentioned, like IDEO sends their participants physical things before the session, and Uber Connect just launched. So maybe this is a thing as a facilitator. You can send people things maybe for your session. So get creative, think about it. You also want to manage the flow of the conversation and make sure that everyone has equal opportunity to be heard, and also like manage that dead air that can sometimes, you know, you sometimes feel on the line. And you need to over communicate as well, because sometimes people, you made an assumption that everyone knows what you're doing, but in Zoom, as soon as you share a screen, it takes over the entire screen. Without warning people that that's going to happen, they might, you know, feel confused. So just over communicate as well when you facilitate. Just wanted to show you an example of what one of our designers did in our team when she was facilitating a session. She added like these surprise and delight factors, and they included what the team were doing, they were doing an ideation session, and the teams would come up with ideas, and then instead of prioritizing them using a prioritization framework, they actually invited guest judges to dial into the session at a particular time, and they were already given all the information of like what the criteria is, and then participants won an Uber Eats voucher. So it's just adding those little bit of like extra surprise and delight factors. Like just because we're working remote doesn't mean it can't be fun. This is another example of how some of our agile teams are using, I guess, retros and these working whiteboards to have a bit of fun. So Retro has some really lighthearted sketches as their templates, and they've got some features like confetti, so you can throw confetti around, and it can make you in your team feel like you're celebrating something when you can't physically be together. In Zoom, you can change your background. So like our team had a meeting that was like a party almost, but it made it really fun and engaging. And I had another meeting with our team after the last webinar about, what could we improve for future webinars. And one of our members, was a potato for half of the session, but it's really just—
Hey, Sam, sorry to just, oh, there we go. Just make sure that your mic is not covered by your gorgeous hair. We were just having a few issues hearing you there, so just make sure that your
if I turn it this way.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, great. It just flipped over. Thank you. But yeah, like our team member was a potato. They were a wizard at one point. I think they were a Dorito, or a pizza. So you can make it fun, and these sessions help you build psychological safety. And lastly, we just want to remind you to be kind to yourself. Remember progress over perfection. Give yourself that time and space to work out these new ways of working and how you're going to facilitate remotely. Mick mentioned things don't always go to plan, but communicating to your participants that you might be trying something new is great, because then they'll be more forgiving that you're testing something. So have a go, and if it doesn't always work out, that's okay. We're still learning. So to wrap up, the 4 practices that will help you facilitate more effective remote workshops are to have a growth mindset, build your session based on outcomes, create a facilitation framework, and invite those human interactions. So we also have this facilitator checklist of everything you need to do kind of as soon as the session starts to at the very end when you've completed this session. That, again, you can make your own. This is ours, and you can, it'll be in the deck if you download the deck later and want to have a look at it. So hopefully you found this session useful, and there's some tips in here that might help you become a better remote facilitator. Have a go, experiment, see what works for you and your team. If you think you're going to need a little more hands-on help remote facilitating and running your first remote session, just let us know, or if you want more information, feel free to reach out. Our Isobar Good team, the part of our business dedicated to social impact, they're actually running free workshops for our clients that want to have a positive impact to in the response of COVID-19. And our business design team is running strategy sessions to help organizations quickly realign their business strategy and their initiatives in response to COVID-19. So we're here to help. It's a crazy time that we're living in, so just reach out if you need anything. That brings us to the end of this session. So if there's quite a few questions have popped up, so thank you for participating. I'll read them out, and then Mick and I will answer them. So the first one, yes, the deck will be linked somewhere online. You should get an email, but I can flick back or leave it on this slide if you want to copy down what that. Nope, we will send you an email. Thank you. Just be told an email is going to be sent. Great. So there was a question about, love to hear more about how you use the Miro presentation mode and what it lets you do as opposed to using a share screen via Zoom.
So, I mean, I can give you my thoughts and then Mick jump in if you have anything else to add. So I guess we would use presentation mode in conjunction with share screen. So it just, I guess, acts as a presentation and helps guide you through the board. So it moves you to each board so people can follow along. If you shared your screen, I guess it could have a similar outcome where you would just show people where you are, or they could follow your cursor. But I just thought it was a nicer experience. Mick, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think you covered that pretty beautifully. Yeah. I guess the other element is that you would just be sharing your screen, I suppose, via Zoom anyway. It's almost like you're merging Miro and slides together as one software. So it stops you from needing to swap screens and have multiple things open.
Yeah, cool. All right, the next question is from Claire that says, people,
just want to make sure you can hear me. People aren't able to directly work on the same sketch or prototyping during ideation. Have you found this challenging?
Yeah.
So I can give one example. So I know that we ran a session and we used the brainwriting template in Miro, and that basically allowed people to write their idea or create their prototype of their idea, and then the next person build onto it. And then we did that kind of, I don't know, 8 times or something. So by the end, people were building on to each other's ideas. So that's kind of one way that you could kind of get around this challenge. Mick, I feel like you've got a lot of experience in this area.
I suppose it depends on which tool you might be using when you are doing prototyping. Another idea that we've been trialing is creating almost like everyone's individual desk space on Miro or on slides. So everyone's kind of given the same template or framework, but then they have their name assigned to the desk, and so everyone can collaborate and ideate in their own space, and people aren't sort of copying and pasting and moving their things around while they're trying to create. And then, as Sam said, we have a few examples where then those concepts we will run where you can ideate and build on each other's concepts, and they kind of get 2 minutes to ideate on somebody else's and move on to the next one. But again, it kind of depends on the tool. Some tools, I'm not sure if it's Figma, but you can have multiple people working on the same thing. It's also a great tool for user testing. So it depends on how you structure it, I think.
Yeah, that's a great example, Mick. All right, so we've got a question from Simon. Is it true that a facilitator can't join a breakout room in Zoom themselves? From what I know about Zoom, I don't think that is true. You can assign yourself to a room, and also if someone in a breakout room needs help, they invite you to the room. So then you click yes, join, and then you're in the room. The next question is from Alex. Are the templates/toolkits that have been set up in Miro available to agencies outside of Isobar? So Miro comes with a bunch of templates already created, so that's great. We have also been, as part of our kind of sharing loop and feedback loop, creating templates when we've finished a session if we think it's really useful, and adding it to our own kind of template library. I don't know, Mick, if you want to say anything else about that.
Yeah, so I guess it depends on your business or the teams that you're working with in terms of being able to generate and create your own templates and then saving them and making your own library. But yeah, Miro itself has an absolute wealth of templates, but it's also worthwhile to note that we sometimes scan through other software like Mural as well, and Metro Retro, because they have really great like inspiration for templates, and then we might go back onto the tool that we know the participants feel comfortable on and recreating it there. So it's kind of, you know, getting inspiration about how you might be able to set up some of those activities you ran face-to-face online. But yeah, they've got heaps of templates. You should definitely check them out.
Yeah, and like Mick said, all three of these tools that we've explored have the ability to create your own templates within them and then add it back to kind of your own library. So again, we're not endorsing any of these tools. We're just sharing the ones that we use. So like our agency has adopted kind of Miro as our main use of this type of tool, but other ones are also good.
Yes. Which is great for the next question.
Have you used Microsoft Whiteboard? I personally haven't used it yet. Mick, have you tried it?
Yes, I have used it in the past. I actually think that it's a good tool for accessibility wise. It has it's coded quite well as a collaboration online tool. And I've used Microsoft Whiteboard before when we've had, participants who had low vision. And so they were able to use text-to-voice technology with that. It also has a wonderful feature where any post-its that you write in real life, you can take a photo of. And I found that Microsoft Whiteboard translates them online better than most of the other whiteboard collaboration-esque tools. I find that I have less spelling errors when there's the translation. My country accent doesn't translate sometimes very well using those tools. But yeah, I think that it depends on what tool you want to use, but it's a good one. I've used it before, yeah.
Nice one. All right. This is an interesting question.
Yeah.
How can you encourage others to turn video on? I think what it really boils down to is psychological safety that you've built with that team so that they aren't, fearful that they're going to be on camera or, some people just don't like it or feel weird about being on camera. But I think it's kind of just building that rapport and kind of just nudging a little bit every time to see if somebody would like to put their camera on. Mick, do you have any other tips?
I think you've covered it well. I mean, you can have, building psychological safety, that's a really big element of building a high-performing team. But at the end of the day, we're in people's homes and we do have to respect their privacy sometimes. And we don't always know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know what their home environment is like. So I understand that sometimes, it's ideal, as Sam mentioned, that we do have video, and I would recommend just having a chat with them and ask, how they're feeling comfortable and anything that you might be able to do as a facilitator to build confidence or help them collaborate.
Nice. The next question is, what are the touch points for good user experiences to prepare before and after? So Mick touched on this a little bit with our checklist, our preparation checklist. Mick, I don't know if you want to kind of run through some of those things.
Yeah. So for good user experience, I suppose, to prepare before and after, I think that there's an element of sending welcoming invitations as well. So when you are sending that agenda, you're kind of giving people a taste, it's their first touch point taste of what they might be expecting within the workshop itself. So I think that's a really good opportunity to develop a welcoming touch point. The other element, we kind of touched on it a little bit in the presentation, but we have been setting up really nice welcome spaces. And in Miro, you can set up what will be the defined viewpoint when people enter the link onto Miro of what is their opening screen. And we've been creating welcome pages. So there are opportunities to make a touch point that makes things a little bit more welcoming. Those are some of the things that come to mind. Yeah.
Nice. Well, it is 12 o'clock now and want to make sure everybody can have lunch or, if you need to go to another meeting, that we want to end on time. But thank you for all of your questions. For any questions that we weren't able to answer, or actually all of the questions, we'll put them up on the website and provide some answers, and the link will be sent out. But thanks for joining, and have a good weekend.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.